Hello shaggers, it's your old dad Tally, and despite being a week late to the party, I have eventually caught up with some of the Resident Evil 5 remake drama. And I've got a couple of hot takes for you, I will not lie. Capcom should not remake Resident Evil 5. Well, not yet anyway. Because I'd like them to do Code Veronica first. Why do I want that? I'm glad you asked, it kinda justifies the whole premise of the video. So, from a canon standpoint, the OG Code Veronica actually came before 4 and helped bridge the gap between Umbrella being an actual thing in 1, 2 and 3, and then just being kinda gone. Right, now I do get that it's a little late to do Code Veronica because 4 already came out and Umbrella's already gone. But man, who cares? Just do like a recap, a flashback, have Claire telling a story to some friend. I don't know, man. I don't make games, I simply talk about them. But regardless, there are a couple of genuine reasons why I think they should do Code Veronica before 5. First and foremost, you can't play Code Veronica on PC without emulation. And while I'm a fan of emulation and think that any excuse to sail the high seas is fine, it's wild to me that if I wanted to play and buy all of the mainline Resident Evil games,
I can't. I simply can't.
So I feel like a remake would kind of remedy that and give some Code Veronica love to us PC players. I mean, like, I could boot up the PS4, but goddamn, that's all the way across the room. And that's just inconvenient. Is it a petty inconvenience? Yeah, man. But it's not one I'm willing to put up with. Next, I feel like Code Veronica could maybe do with a bit of modernisation here and there. There's a lot of weird stuff in the game that hasn't particularly aged well. You know what I'm talking about. Alfred and Alexia. Yeah, that. And I get what Capcom were trying to do originally, right? They were going for this whole Buffalo Bill antagonist, and I think at the time, contextually it fit. The world was different, it was a different time, it was a different place. And I get it, right? The man was told from birth that his sister was the bee's fucking knees. And that would really damage a person, you know? Imagine being the worst sibling and being told it all of your life. Could not be me. I'm not the worst sibling at all. Anyway, I suppose in his mind, in order to be better, he needs to be Alexia. I get it. You know, I think the cross-dressing thing was handled poorly. You know, I mentioned how it gave Buffalo Bill vibes, but not in a, oh look, it's so inspired and artsy, and it's more of a, ooh, that is a product of the late 90s. You know what I'm talking about. And truth be told, I do think that the team that made Resident Evil 2 Remake and 4 Remake could flesh it out a little bit. You know, they really nicely can flesh out parts of games that maybe needed a little bit more depth. Alright, think U3 in the Resident Evil 4 Remake. It went from a random boss that just really has no build up to being Ada's main nemesis of the campaign. The next thing I'd like to see fleshed out, and don't make it fucking weird, is the twins' relationship. I think you could give a lot of context as to how they both ended up the way they did in a more modern era, and I think that would be cool. I'd really like to see how they fine-tune the whole maybe it's incest in a reasonable way. You know me, I'm a sucker for an unconventional love story, but in actual fact, I would just like more lore. I just love lore, right? When I was like 13, 14, I turned every single clickable hyperlink on the Resident Evil wiki purple. I shit you not, I just wanted more. I just wanted more, and I still want more lore, alright? I want more Code Veronica lore. And lastly for me on the Code Veronica front, it sets up a lot of the Chris and Wesker dynamic in number 5. As many of you know, Wesker dies in Resident Evil 1, and then just kind of comes back. Don't talk about it, we don't really need to know. It's T-Virus stuff. But going from 1 to 5 doesn't really make that much sense. You know, Chris knows about Wesker in 5, and if we're going to relegate it to the Lost in Nightmares DLC, I don't know, man. I feel like Code Veronica does have an important step there. Wesker shows up on the island, kicks the shit out of Claire, and antagonises Chris. And I think it's a key part of the journey from going from fuckable twink to absolute boulder destroying nightmare Chris Redfield. And to actually talk about Resident Evil 5, man, the game holds up, right? This game's what, 15 years old at this point? Still looks good, still feels good, plays good, and is fun. I do wish it had some quality of life changes, such as being able to start a new game from scratch, but man, the game is just fun, you know. I don't think there needs to be a replacement for that. And some of you are now going to say, well, 4 was one of the greatest Resident Evil and one of the greatest games of all time. Why did it need a remake? You're right, 4 was the absolute GOAT. 4 Remake, also the absolute GOAT. But something about 4 just hasn't aged quite as poorly. It's an old GameCube game. It needed some modernisation and it needed a new coat of paint. When you try and introduce someone with 4, it's still got tank controls in a kind of clunky way, and OG4 definitely has a cartoony element to it in the action. There's the hammy voice acting, and the graphics set a tone that's way in line with 1 to 3 and Code Veronica. But I always kind of felt like 5 had a bit more grounding to it. You know, as grounded as any Resident Evil game really could be anyway. And there were parts of 4 where you were absolutely supposed to be laughing at or with the game, and 5 didn't really have that. It played things a lot straighter. In fact, tonally, I bet I could walk from RE4 Remake almost directly into RE5 and still feel a really good sense of continuity. Maybe even more than old 4 into 5. Like, I don't think I'm really the guy to tell you how well Resident Evil 5 has actually aged. Even Sheva's AI isn't really that bad. A lot of people back in the day, even sometimes today, like to talk shit, but just take the guns off Sheva, and then she does a pretty serviceable job at staying alive. And then you've basically just got a single player game with someone else to hold some of your items for you. Or if you just don't give her ammo, she won't waste your ammo. Now I get there has been the cries that Resident Evil 5 features too much racism to be remade in a modern day. You know, there's some bad looks in there, such as a big burly white man haymaking his way across the continent of Africa. I get it, it's not a great look. And because of that, a lot of people label Resident Evil 5 as a game with lots of racism in it. And the funny thing is, they're right, but they did the wrong working. Resident Evil 5 does feature a lot of racism, a lot of genuine racism, but it's not Chris and Sheva who are the problem, it's Tricell. Why do we think we're doing this in Africa? Because it's a sad thing to admit, but we all know that Tricell wouldn't have tried to pull this shit in America after there were eyes on Umbrella. So of course they go for a country that the developed world doesn't particularly care about, and they go absolutely hog wild. Like, a key part of Resident Evil, from game number 1, is the genuine corruption and lengths of abuse that corporations will go to when they think they'll get away with it. Like, goddamn, we see it in the real world. We don't even need a pretend evil organisation. So yeah, before I get into a rant about the evil of modern day capitalism, let's just put that to the side for now. All I'm saying is, context matters, and we really should be asking ourselves, why is this happening, or why is this the way that it is? You don't just look at things and go, yeah, that is what it is. Yeah, no shit. You've got to ask, why is it doing that? Anyway, I'm going to wrap up this little rant. I kind of just wanted to talk about Resident Evil 5 for a little bit, while I make another video. And truth be told, I had fun doing it. It's an excuse to play Resident Evil 5. So as always, like the video, shaggers, go comment something for the YouTube algorithm, subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you all later. I love you, bye. Mwah.